Season 3 has definitely been an interesting one. We got some new weapons added, 2 different ranked modes with fairly different metas, and some buffs and nerfs which have raised and lowered the pick rates of some weapons and gadgets this season. In today's video, I'll be going over the meta weapons and loadouts that the top players have been using to win their games. Let's start off with ranked being changed to terminal attack. This was a completely unexpected change that made a lot of people understandably upset. However, I'm not going to go into the details on whether this was a good or a bad decision, but instead want to emphasize that there is a difference between the meta for terminal attack and the meta for world tour. Because your health doesn't regenerate very far in TA, Light became one of the most used classes by far and one of the best picks for this game mode. This is in contrast to the meta for high-level World Tour, but we'll discuss that more later. Sniper quickly became one of the dominant picks because at the start of the season, all classes only regenerated up to 100 HP, meaning that a single body shot with the sniper could easily kill any of them if they were weakened beforehand. Fortunately, this was changed with a patch later in the season, but the sniper definitely had a reign of terror over ranked for a little while. We also saw the rise of the sonar grenade, and mediums were placing a lot of turrets and landmines. The game basically revolved around the idea that information was king, and that any damage ability was very powerful since players only regenerated up to 100 HP, meaning that many things could kill when they normally wouldn't. I personally also started using things like Breaching Charge and Thermal Bore to start creating R6 style site setups and rotates, but I'm not entirely sure if many other people did that. We had some big changes to the game this season that affected World Tour. Some major ones were the increased time to capture a cash out station and the increased cash amount on kill, and then the 30% instant cash after depositing the box into the cash out station. We also had some more competitive lobbies added to the mode. Emerald Queue, which was introduced halfway through the season and called the Finals, requires you to win entire tournaments to rank up, leading players to put on the sweatiest of loadouts to show what was truly meta at the top levels of the game. And you could only get into this mode if you'd gotten to the previous max rank of Gold 1 beforehand, meaning that you not only had to win a lot of games, but also play a fair bit. So with all these changes to World Tour, what did the meta for each of the classes look like? By far the most meta team comp is heavy, heavy, medium, followed by medium, medium, heavy, and then light, medium, heavy, and triple medium being viable as well. For players with good recoil control and great positioning, heavy is probably one of the best classes to play. The best weapons in the hands of the best players for heavy this season have been the SA-12 and the Lewis gun, using Winch Claw, Mesh Shield, or Charge and Slam. Some of you might be surprised to hear that the Lewis gun is still meta, even after the nerfs, but it definitely is. The only thing Embark did was effectively nerf the gun for more casual players, as recoil nerfs usually only end up affecting them, because high-level players will simply learn and adapt to the new recoil. It did also get a little bit of a damage nerf, but it still remains one of the best guns Heavy has to fight at range. Even after the changes, Dome Shield also remains a requirement if you want to play the most meta loadout possible, as the ability to Dome Shield into a room and deal free opening damage on an enemy team is way too good for high-level players to pass up. RPG is still one of the best gadgets in the entire game, allowing you to deal free damage and destroy the arena with a simple click, and if you have 2 heavies on a coordinated team, you can demolish other teams that aren't running this comp. In fact, it's so good that it's actually banned in some high-level scrim matches. It's kind of a dive tank strategy that players of games like Overwatch might recognize. The idea is that you give your 2 heavies a jump pad, they both go up and RPG 1 or more targets, and it's just cleanup after that point. If done right, it's really hard to react to and is one of the reasons that a lot of high-level players think that RPG needs a rework, and why other players who might not have experienced this strategy or used it themselves might say that people are needlessly complaining. I personally think that Roll Queue could solve this issue for high-level players without RPG needing a substantial rework, but I'm not sure that that's the direction Embark wants to take this game or not, so we'll see what ends up happening. Following the nerfs to the FCAR, most mediums have switched to one of 2 guns, the AKM and the Model 1887. The AKM naturally took the top spot after the FCAR's nerf because they had very similar DPS numbers, and the AKM has a large max size that helps to counter Dome and Mesh Shield while also being very forgiving. The model, however, has had no changes to it at all, but has simply grown in popularity this season. Perhaps this is Medium's answer to all the heavies running Winch Claw nowadays, or they simply realized how good this weapon has always been. In terms of gadgets, Jump Pad and Zipline still remain the kings of the medium loadout, with some mediums running both at the same time. especially if you have two heavy teammates. We've also seen the rise of the glitch trap this season being one of the best counters to defib and just being a good gadget overall. Defib is also basically a requirement, and if you're trying to play the most meta loadout for a medium possible, you have to play Heal Beam. We've seen a few DMAT players here and there, but I would call that an off-meta pick in general, and if you are running a heavy medium team, Heal Beam is just too good to pass up. APS is also a decent swap gadget as well if you end up dealing with a lot of heavy RPGs and you are having a hard time countering them. At the lower levels of World Tour, explosive mines and gas mines do really well, but you don't see them as much at the higher levels. Light has become a little bit more meta this season. One of the biggest changes they received was the buff to health regen, allowing them to be much more competitive at higher levels of play. However, things such as RPG are still a bit of a hard counter to them, so while they might be much better than they were before, they still might need some changes before they can be considered a fantastic pick for the more high-level team comps. However, as mentioned previously, Lights tend to do very well in more casual lobbies compared to medium and heavy players. Cloak Light has become much less common since the addition of Winch Claw, as Lights are one of the classes that suffer the most when getting hit with a winch. So naturally, we saw a rise in the pick rate of Evasive Dash to combat this, as it allows Light players to have a better chance of survival instead of just getting sledgehammered or shotgunned to death. However, if you have good positioning and can consistently stun winch users or stay out of their range, Cloak is still a very good pick, but the majority of players do struggle with this. Grapple also got a small cooldown buff, and with the changes that made depositing a cash box way more important, this has allowed for a new, more objective-focused playstyle for Light. XP54 is still the best pick for Light in general, mainly because it's good in almost any situation. At the beginning of the season, we saw a very oppressive LH1, but that has since been nerfed. We also had throwing knives become very oppressive in casual lobbies, and even in more competitive ones at times. But in general, most Lights at high levels still prefer the XP54, and since the knives have been slightly nerfed, let me know what you all think. Are they in a good spot right now, or was that nerf not enough, or was it too much? In terms of gadgets, Gateway is easily still the best option for Lights to run to help you get your team ahead in pacing and provide a good movement or escape option for your team. Stun Gun is also still a very good option even after its nerfs, especially against Winch Claw heavy users. Glitch Nade and Frag Grenade still remain the best pieces of team utility for Light players, and can do a very good job at defending cash outs when paired with the Gateway. We've also seen some players using the sword this season, with often varying results. Some people think it's really impressive, while others find it not that hard to counter. Vanish Bomb and Sonar Grenade also remain popular picks, but these are more swap gadgets or off-meta alternatives. After the large community backlash, I'll be surprised if Terminal Attack remains the main competitive mode. I'll be interested to see what becomes of Emerald and Ruby rank in Season 4, and if they'll add a new gemstone to the game for a third ranked option maybe, or to replace one of the other two. Many of you also may have noticed that I didn't really talk about the addition of the bow, spear, or dual blades into the game, and that was mostly because they weren't meta at all. I think this is something that Embark will need to address next season, that is making new weapons actually good picks to keep the game feeling fresh. I'm also curious to see if they implement some sort of role queue option. I know a lot of players get very annoyed when facing a triple medium team or when they queue up as a heavy, only to get two light teammates who run off and die right away. My solo queue brothers, I really do feel your pain. I think in general the solo queue experience could be improved, and I really hope Embark completely crush it next with the release of Season 4.